Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. Today we welcome the Associate Dean and Director of UVM Extension in the university's College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. It's an opportunity to hear from the director and to learn about Extension's programs, events, and activities that positively impact Vermonters. It is a real pleasure to welcome back Roy Beckford. Roy started as Extension Director in May of last year, and he's now entering his first full year on the job. Good afternoon, Roy. Thanks so much for being with us again.
Good afternoon, Fran, and thank you for having me back.
So let's start with just a little bit of reflection. What stands out for you looking back at 2021 and your first 8 months as Director of Extension during a very challenging time for all of us?
Absolutely, Fran. It's been challenging. What stands out for me in Vermont is just how able the people within Extension are. I am just very, very pleased with the progress, with their flexibility and with their ability to just address issues when they emerge.
Wonderful. And was there a pleasant surprise, perhaps something you weren't expecting?
Oh, there have been several. I'm pleased at the grantsmanship that I see in Extension, the ability for people to actually assess and apply for grants and to get them, competitive grants, I mean. That actually surprised me at just a skill. I mean, I'm coming from other institutions in my past where, I mean, they're large, but people weren't as able and as capable as I've seen some of these folks at UVM.
Oh, that's terrific. And what have you learned, or what kind of comes top of mind about your new home state of Vermont? You've met a lot of people. You've really been out there talking to a lot. So what comes top of mind about the state?
Vermont is interesting in many, many ways. One of the things that surprised me is how often I run into people who are related to other people that I just met. That's amazing. I really never see that in the state of Florida or North Carolina or even in places overseas at work. So I've come to embrace that you will run into people who are related or who have close associations across the state of Vermont. But it's really a wonderful thing because it narrows down relationships and help me build bridges a lot better.
The state is like one big city or something, and
Yes.
less than 6 degrees of separation. And now as you look ahead to 2022, what are your top goals or priorities for Extension?
I've spent the last 7.5 months reflecting, learning, and listening. And I've said that to you in my past interviews. So it's time for me to actually begin to take all of that, push it together, and create a proper assessment for plans ahead. I really plan to work on fixing the management structure, the organizational structure of UVM Extension, because there's some work there that needs to be done. Another important issue that needs to be addressed is the fact that there needs to be a career ladder for our staff across the organization. Those are the two things I think that needs to be addressed, and I'm going to be actually working on. I've already started working on those things and will continue to work on them post-ACE.
Okay, a lot of managerial needs. So what is needed to ensure that you can meet those goals, and what challenges do you have to addressing your priorities?
A number of things, all of which will come together. It's part of the assessment, it's part of the listening process that already happened. So certainly some finances have to come together, not necessarily real money all the time, but how we manage those monies. As I mentioned to you earlier in this interview, our folks in Extension are really, really good at getting grant funding. So sometimes, in many ways, we're not necessarily short on some money to do programming. We're short on money to actually hire people, to keep them, and to remain competitive in a world that has gotten really, really harsh out there. Folks will drag good people from us. So we really need to fix those issues. So it's part finance, part personal resources, but all in all, I think it's going to take some amount of ingenuity to put all of that together.
Well, speaking of funding, it sounds like a lot of grants help fund Extension. What are other ways that UVM Extension gets its funding?
Extension across the United States gets its funding from the federal government through the Smith-Lever Act, which is a funding mechanism that essentially funds all of Extension across the United States. So we are actually a recipient of Smith-Lever monies. In the state of Vermont, as in all the states, Extension also gets some funding from the state government. So we are fortunate to receive money from the federal government through the Smith-Lever Act, and as well we receive a match from the Vermont state government that helps us out in that regard. And as well, we do get monies from competitive grants, as I mentioned.
Great. And so what are the key areas in which Extension is working on behalf of all Vermonters?
Oh, extension is key. And key is an important word. It really is what the mechanism that turns that lock, that opens up opportunities across the country and certainly across the state of Vermont. So specifically in Vermont, we work in production agriculture, in forests and natural resources, food systems, youth, environment, and so on and so forth. Those are the key areas in which Extension is working in the state of Vermont. But as I may have alluded, that's just the key areas. There are other areas that benefit Vermonters in which Extension continually gets involved and collaborate with agencies that do other kind of work. Health is one of those emerging areas.
Well, it really is very extensive with expertise and consultation, all of these things. But why does Extension matter to someone who might not be involved in the areas that you just mentioned, which covers a broad range, but still, how is it to somebody who might go, Extension's really about farming or?
Well, that question is part philosophical and also part financial, part natural. Extension matters because it's a part of the land grant mission that was coined in 1862 and then again in 1914 through the Smith-Lever Act. Extension has always been a part of the developmental process of the United States. And so whenever you wake up in the morning, the first thing you do is you grab a bowl of cereal or whatever. Extension has played a role in every morsel of food that Americans consume in some way, because we work with farmers, we work with our forest people, we work with all aspects of development, developmental resources in the United States. In that regard, Extension really, really matters, and it's a catalyst behind a number of things that drive the economy of the country.
Terrific. And many, of course, you have your research. That's where some of the grant money comes from. How do our food systems work? How can they work better? How do our communities work better? It's really covers such a wide purview. And in that, you make efficient use of the funding through partnerships and collaborators. Let's talk about that a little bit across the state. Who are some of the key partnerships that you have?
Every part of government in the state of Vermont actually work in some regard with Extension. But the key players, because of the work we do on the ground, in land and in sea, are the agencies of agriculture, natural resources. In recent years, the Department of Health has gotten really more engaged with Extension, and we've become really good partners together in achieving much of the mandates set for the Department of Health. We've become really important players in meeting people's needs in that regard too. So, it's not just those, there are many other agencies of government too, the federal government, Natural Resources Conservation Service, the Farm Service Agency. These are all fundamental partners with Extension in the process that helps people survive and provide solutions for people's lives in the state of Vermont.
Certainly, and with this expanded focus on health, of course, has been true during COVID. And COVID recovery plans at both the state and federal level are going to have enormous influence on all of us. Do you have a sense of the recovery plan impact on extension in general and agriculture specifically?
Oh, the Department the Agency of Agriculture of the state of Vermont does have a COVID or pandemic response plan. And we will continue to play a major role in making sure we carry out the assessments that are necessary to understand issues that emerge post-pandemic. I mean, nobody knows how long this pandemic is going to last. I think most people thought it was just going to be a year or so. But now we're getting into like year 3, pretty much. But just like in post-hurricane or post-apocalypse anywhere in the country, extension will do the assessment, we'll conduct the groundwork, we'll work with the farmers, with the food producers, the value-added folks, wherever they are, we'll look at their social issues and we'll address them, and we will come up with programs that deal with the constraints upon their lives.
Okay, terrific. And we're almost out of time, but just quickly, with what's happening at the federal level with policies and regulations, to what degree is extension's work influenced by decisions made in Congress?
Oh, to a great level. I mean, as I said, extension is part of the land grant mission.
Yeah.
That's one thing. The other thing is that the federal government comes up with all these very important programs every year, some of which has to be carried out by extension. Okay. The Farm Bill is one important issue. There are fundamental things within the Farm Bill that extension is required by mandate to carry out. So we're involved in key components of the federal process.
And you do. And we're at the end of our program today, so I want to point out that if you have any questions or comments for Roy or want to learn more about UVM Extension, you can contact the state office by calling the toll-free number on your screen. It's 866-622-2990, or you can also check the Extension website by going to uvm.edu/extension. Roy Beckford, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. Stay well.